Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So we got our hands on some of Kamala Harris's internal polling numbers and it is not looking too good for her. You have the national narrative. You have the media, the mainstream media narrative about Kamala Harris. Oh, she's, polling super high. They say that everything is going fine. And we haven't had a lot of polls released in a lot of these key states. But looking nationally in the gold standard of aggregates on Real Clear Politics, Harris is not leading nationally by even 2%, let alone the 3% that she needs to hit to have a really, decent chance to be favored in the electoral college. And when you're looking at this, you see what they're saying. They're saying Pennsylvania is looking rough. They say very possible, but very possible does not exude any sort of confidence. And there are rumors that they're regretting not picking somebody like a Josh Shapiro to be her running mate. And it is what it is. But Pennsylvania is a state where they're not confident in Pennsylvania. That's why now she's doing interviews. She's going on these networks now. Obviously, it's ABC, which we understand is a very favorable network to Kamala Harris. One of the executives introduced her to her husband over at ABC. And apparently, North Carolina's feeling better to them this time around than Arizona. That is not looking good. That is not looking good at all for Kamala Harris, because if you talk about North Carolina, Donald Trump won North Carolina in 2020 in a year that was not really the best political environment for Donald Trump. And even if North Carolina is like competitive still and it's kind of, I guess you would say, a toss-up, probably tilting towards Trump, you would assume, Arizona is probably out of reach, and Nevada probably this time could vote to the right of Arizona. That's out of reach as well. They acknowledge it. They say they both seem possible, but they're challenging, and Michigan and Wisconsin are looking the best. And even then, the polls we've seen out of Michigan, regardless of where we've seen the polls, they're not looking good for Kamala Harris whatsoever. So we're going to cover this more in depth and talk about some new developments in this race and why the Harris campaign is kind of showcasing that they're not confident in her chances. We're going to talk about all this and more, but I have to tell you guys about redeaglepolitics.com, particularly shop.redeaglepolitics.com, because the merch is back. The 2024 election drop is here. And for a limited time, you could buy one, get one 20% off on all t-shirts, tank tops, and coffee mugs. I would highly recommend the Trump iconic black mug. I'm drinking out of it right now as I speak during this video. You have the Trump bullet design on the front, and you have the inspirational quote on the back. It is subtle. It is absolutely great to have. And it's my favorite mug that I've ever owned. I've owned it for probably a couple days now. I'd recommend it. Shop.redeaglepolitics.com. We're doing that deal for a limited time. The link is in the description and the pinned comment down below. So we have the leaked memos from the Harris campaign. And it's like, what exactly are they doing? Because let's just take this at face value. Michigan and Wisconsin are looking the best. Wisconsin is the hardest state to poll that's remotely competitive, especially when Donald Trump is on the ballot. Those rural voters in the driftless area that are like Trump only, they're extraordinarily difficult to reach. And the same thing arguably goes for a lot of rural Michigan as well. Those white working class voters, they keep missing them. And the ones they get in their samples typically lean left compared to where they actually are. And Michigan polls already look good for Donald Trump. But, assuming, let's say they get Wisconsin, Michigan, they're most confident in North Carolina, and they're not confident at all in Pennsylvania. They're not confident in Georgia or Arizona. It seems like they're just writing it off. Trump's going up to Las Vegas today. So that puts Donald Trump at 271 if he's able to get those states. I don't even understand what they're doing here in terms of their strategy. North Carolina is a very, very tough state for the Democrats to flip. I think most Democrats, if they're being honest with themselves in North Carolina, they can admit that. They'll do well in the research triangle. The problem is it's not the biggest part of the state. And even though you had a higher propensity electorate in the 2022 midterms, Democrats did worse. And then when you look at the mail-in ballot request data out of North Carolina, it is not looking good. Democrats, first of all, there's less mail-in ballots that are flying around. That's not good news for Democrats because that's typically how a lot of those voters voted in 2020. Now, it is true that a lot more Democrats now are going to vote either in person early or on election day because COVID is in the rearview mirror. I get that. I understand that. But they're not really drumming up a lot of the enthusiasm in these mail-in ballot requests, even compared to 2022 in some instances. And it seems like from the data, which is not perfect, you're getting a whiter electorate so far than you saw in 2022. That's not really good news for Kamala Harris, given the fact that she is supposedly, this candidate that could supercharge black turnout. They say, yeah, you need to do that to win North Carolina and make inroads. It's not like the Research Triangle's grown a ridiculous amount since 2020. Yeah, Democrats are in a tough bind in North Carolina. They'll probably win the governorship there. Even that's not a sure thing. But again, I'd say that Kamala Harris is really going to struggle. If they're more confident in North Carolina than they are in Arizona, both of these states are probably going red along with the state of Nevada. That's what they don't understand. And you could take Wisconsin out of their column because we know how the polls work there. And even the public polls out of Michigan, if she's most confident in Michigan, which the public polls right now, whether they're conservative, liberal, in-state, out-of-state, you name it, are all showing the same thing, and that's like a toss-up. That means Wisconsin's probably going to go Republican, and they're not confident in Pennsylvania. That effectively shuts down the path to 270. That doesn't even take Georgia into account. You could give Harris Georgia and Michigan, and on top of it, you could give her, it seems like Wisconsin. It's not enough. It is not enough to get her to 270. Where exactly is the pathway for them? I don't exactly see it. If we turn out, that's the other problem. We need to make sure we get people to the polls, either before Election Day or on Election Day. Typically before, if you know how you're going to vote. You could always track your vote if you have any concerns. But this is not the only memo that's showing it. You look into the Politico playbook from these people, a leaked memo. What is it exactly showing? It shows that Kamala Harris is basically ceding voters to the Republicans, and that's what they're doing. And they're trying to go after voters that they can't exactly get. This is the problem. They're saying we're going to cut into Trump's numbers in rural North Carolina and rural Georgia. And they cite Obama in 2008. First of all, Obama-Trump voters exist, and they're not coming back, and they're especially not coming back for Kamala Harris, and that goes for Pennsylvania, where some of them might have voted for a John Fetterman or a Josh Shapiro. They're not voting for Kamala Harris if they voted for Trump twice. That's the problem. They understand, they're not going to be able to drum up a lot more support in the suburbs compared to 2020. Maybe they improve in Montgomery. They improve a little bit. They may lose ground in Bucks and in some of these Pittsburgh suburbs, but their strategy for Pennsylvania is to go to the rural counties. It's a bold strategy and probably not one that's going to play out well for them because that's where Donald Trump has the most appeal. And there's also, in some of those counties, they do add up, but there's not that many voters that are winnable overall. They're better off trying to drum up turnout, but they're not exactly running that same strategy. They're not running up the score in terms of this black turnout, and it's not something that's boding too well for them. It's really not. They're trying to stave down margins in counties that are voting for Trump with 75% of the vote. And there just really is no appeal that Kamala Harris brings to these places. Even her running mate, Tim Walz, who is they're trying to send him out there as this white working class minstrel show clown. Well, either way, he lost a lot of ground. He underran Trump in rural Minnesota in 2022, even in certain parts of his own district, despite the fact that he was running against a weak candidate as an incumbent governor of the state, which, again, there's a lot less polarization there. He's not that strong of a surrogate, not even that strong of a candidate at this point. And when you talk about the state of Minnesota, Donald Trump is just down 4 in a post-debate poll from the Minnesota Post. that is not good news for Kamala Harris, because a lot of these pollsters, they have underestimated Donald Trump in the past. You're talking about a 4-point split. Even just taking it at face value, that would confirm that Michigan is neck and neck. Michigan, you're not going to see it run to the right of Minnesota by any less than probably 3 points this cycle. Probably a little bit higher, because you're not going to see 2016 level third-party voting. So when you look at that, that is not good news for Kamala Harris. And in terms of Michigan, another poll came out of Michigan, and it's from Mitchell Research, which underestimated Trump by 4 to 5 points in 2020, and it's showing the race neck and neck. It doesn't matter whether you see a right-leaning poll or a left-leaning poll. Every poll we've seen is between Trump +1 and Harris +1, and this was entirely post-debate. And when you talk about the debate, the people said that Harris won the debate, but the undecided voters are what matter, and more people switch from Harris to Trump than the inverse, so Trump won the debate. That's the only metric that matters, is the top line, who really wins that debate. Donald Trump benefited more from the debate electorally, regardless of the media spin and trying to gaslight the public into thinking that it was some, epic performance from Harris because she happened to, somehow speak more coherently than Biden spoke. So here's more proof that Kamala Harris lost the debate to Trump, because the voters that are switching because of the debate almost double switch from Harris to Trump than the inverse, even in a liberal pollster that conducts their polls in a college town. So when you look at that, that's not good news. And it does confirm a lot of what we've seen, but also Pennsylvania. The Supreme Court overturned the lower court ruling and said that you can't count these undated mail-in ballots, which I believe there were around a couple 100,000 of them in 2020. They changed the laws before the election, and the rejection rates were super low, and they bragged about it in terms of fortification. Not anymore. They can't do that anymore. And this is the final ruling ahead of the election. They are not allowed to do that, and that's probably going to net Donald Trump, even if it's 20,000 votes, 40,000, 50,000 votes in Pennsylvania. That is crucial for Donald Trump in a state that will be decided by, less than, I think everybody agrees, probably less than 2% on either side, whether it's a good night for Trump or a bad night for Trump. So Pennsylvania, Donald Trump is in a great position. They've been spending a lot of money and resources. The Senate race there, Republicans are catching up. McCormick is catching up. He may even knock off Casey depending on how election night goes. So you look at Pennsylvania, Michigan's neck and neck. Wisconsin, I think you could toss the Marquette poll in the garbage. We're getting a poll out of Iowa this weekend from the Gold Standard. We'll see how that goes. But regardless of how you look at this map, Donald Trump is in that driver's seat. You have the big 7 swing states. The Harris campaign cannot demonstrate that they're confident in any of them. And the fact that they're spending a lot of time and energy in North Carolina, which is objectively like their long shot state, kind of proves that something's going on. They're not really focused on the Southwest. They know they're in trouble. The theft of the no tax on tips thing is backfired. We'll see if Harris tries to steal the no taxes on overtime proposal that Trump came up with once again. So it's up to Trump to go out there and win North Carolina, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. But when you look at the ballot request data we've seen out of all 3 of those states, it's looking very good for Donald Trump, especially because a lot of the requests we're going to see have already been requested. If historical trends are any indication, and Democrats are in dire straits, and they're not in a good position in Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, or Michigan. You might see that 312 to 226, and that's exactly where this race was between Donald Trump and pre-debate Joe Biden. Whether he wins the popular vote or loses the popular vote is completely irrelevant. The bottom line is the state of this race is not changing. The mainstream media narrative, the cycle is continuously changing. They're going to try to drum up support for Harris. It can be reflected in some of the polling in terms of response bias, but what we know is that public opinion's not going to change on a whim. Donald Trump is still the favorite, and the Harris campaign are indicating that's the case. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.